Well, I presume town meeting started when the town was formed back in 1722, but our basic form did change a bit back in 1996 with the adoption of our town charter. Previous to our town charter, voters met twice a year, the second Tuesday of each March, to vote on officials. And then all the budget items, zoning ordinances, and other rules and regulations were voted on by the voters the following Saturday. With the adoption of the charter, all of those responsibilities were transferred to the town council, with the exception of the election of officers and the adoption of the budget. Now on Tuesday, citizens will vote for their elected officials as they did previous to the change, and they also vote on town bond issues on Tuesday. And then the operating budget is voted on at the traditional town meeting the following Saturday. When the voters convene in March, they vote on the annual budget, which takes effect that following July to the next June. We're on a fiscal year here in Londonderry, so it's for a 12-month period. It's probably important to note that under our form of government, under state law, the town and school are separate government bodies, so the town council doesn't involve itself with any activities regarding the school, and the school board has no authority over the town functions. So on Tuesday, the second Tuesday in March, voters will go to the polls and will vote for the town officers and town bonds. They will also vote for school district officers and the entire school budget. The only type of government in New Hampshire of which the school is a department of the municipality is in several of New Hampshire cities. In towns, by law, the school district is a separate legal entity. They have their own governing body, which is a school board, and they also have their own school district meeting. Citizens in Londonderry can petition the council to place a warrant on town meeting for budgetary matters only. To accomplish that, the petition has to consist of at least 25 signatures of registered voters, not residents, but they have to be registered voters here in Londonderry. And it has to be received by the first Tuesday in February. Once received, unless a court rules that it is invalid, the council has to place that item on the town meeting warrant for voter consideration. What we do is we encourage petitioners, regardless of whether they believe the council would favor or be opposed to a particular item, to submit that article in its wording to my office, and we'll actually send it over to our town attorney who will rule on it to make sure that the proposed action is legal. What we found in the past was folks would submit a petition to us with the signatures already gathered. It would be deficient pursuant to state statute, so the petitioner would have to go out and get the signatures all over again. So by following it this way, we can tell you whether your article is valid before you go out and obtain signatures of fellow registered voters. The moderator per state law is in charge of the operation of town meeting. In Londonderry, the most recent moderators have not followed Robert's rule. They follow their own rules, which they explained at the beginning of the meeting. And a couple of major rules are, obviously, they want to make sure that all the speakers are civil towards one another. But probably most important is that usually the moderator will take one amendment on a motion at a time, so it doesn't get confusing on the floor at town meeting. And once they dispense with the first amendment, then if the body so desires, they can propose a second amendment on that particular motion.
It's not like we're taking more money out of that fund balance than was originally intended. We're just doing something different with it. I think it makes sense to do it. I'd like to move the question on the amendment.
The motion is to move the question, seconded by Mr. Hajar. As many as are in favor of moving the question signify by raising the cards. Those opposed, the question is moved.
That motion means that it can no longer be discussed or debated, and that the person making the motion is requested we immediately act upon the question at hand, whether it's the adoption of the budget or consideration of our special revenue funds, whatever the matter is. Historically, what the moderators in Londonderry have done is if there are citizens queued up at the microphone to speak, then the moderator may rule that motion out of order, but will move the question after all those who are in line have an opportunity to weigh in on the original question.
As many as are in favor of Article 10 as amended signify by raising the cards. Those opposed, Article 10 as amended passes. Motion's been made to restrict reconsideration by Mr. Hajar. Second. As many as are in favor of restricting reconsideration signify by raising the cards. Those opposed, reconsideration is restricted.
That's a maneuver whereby once an article is voted on, and if the motion to restrict reconsideration passes, that particular item cannot be brought up later on in the meeting. And that's a procedure used by many towns in New Hampshire to safeguard against an item being brought up late in the meeting when there's a possibility there's only a handful of people remaining at the meeting. A registered voter can make a motion on anything on the budget. One thing which cannot be considered per state law is an amendment or a motion cannot be made for a purpose not in the original budget. State Department of Revenue Administration has ruled that is essentially taking action without warning. It wasn't posted. Even if that motion did pass, DRA would disallow the appropriation when we set our tax rate in the fall of the year. It needs to be submitted to the moderator prior to the vote, signed by at least 5 registered voters who are present at the meeting. And what I say prior to the vote is the state law is constructed that way, so you don't want a voice vote and then a division of the House and then a petition received after that where the original outcome of the motion may not be the same. So it's got to be 5 registered voters in writing. The voters have to be present, and it's got to be submitted prior to consideration of that article.